Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video we will be discussing about what is an immutable infrastructure, how or what is Packer, how Packer is used to create that immutable infrastructure. To demonstrate that example, we will be creating an AMI of pre-configured Jenkins as this video's example. So yeah, let's get right into it. So what is an immutable infrastructure? So in the real-time scenarios, what happens is that there are multiple applications which require certain pre-configured environment, which includes the binaries, dependencies, and also also its associated applications as well, other applications. So in order to create such environments at scale, creating an instances and installing those binary dependencies manually is not a recommended method, because since it's a manual process, there are a lot of chances that human errors might be involved. There might be a certain misconfigurations, and also scaling those environment would be a very big issue. So for that reason, what we'll be doing is that we'll be creating an image of that particular instance where all those application dependencies, the libraries are already pre-configured. It's just that you need to spin up that instance using that instance image. To create that image, to create that pre-configured image, we have an open source tool known as Packer. Packer is another open source tool created by HashiCorp. HashiCorp also has created the famous tool Terraform. So using the Packer, we will be creating a Jenkins instance. So let's get into it. So basically, what happens is that the Packer, first we'll be creating a Packer template, which is a JSON template. So in that template, we will be defining the base image. We'll also be defining the instance requirements, like the base instance image ID and the user, the region. And also, once we have that image in place, we need to configure that particular image using a script, or using Ansible playbooks, or using just shell commands or the PowerShell scripts, and so on. So what we'll be doing is that we'll be creating an Packer template over here, and we'll be having the EC2. In this video, we will be explaining about creating an EC2 AMI image for Jenkins on AWS. So yeah, as I was saying, we'll be using Packer to create a pre-configured Jenkins instance template. Okay. So in that template, we will be having 3 to 4 main components. The first is the builder, where the builder is responsible for creating images and generating images of the various platforms. In this instance, in this example, we are taking the example of AWS, but simultaneously, we can also provision the same instance for Azure, GCP, Alibaba Cloud, VMware, and so on. So where we can provision and configure the same, we can have the same configurations for multiple cloud providers. So that's one of that's the main job of the builders section. So coming to the provisioner section, the provisioner is where exactly the configuration takes place. So the builder builds the or extracts the image, and on that image, the provisioner runs their configuration scripts. It might be shell scripts, or PowerShell scripts, or Ansible playbooks, and so on. So those are the basic layout of the Packer template. So now let's create a Packer template where we'll be installing the Jenkins. So as you can see over here, I have created a shell script where we have given the instructions. We have given the shell commands to create the Jenkins on that particular EC2 instance. And don't worry, these commands can be found in the Jenkins documentation, downloading installation Jenkins. So it's the same set of commands which I have included in this shell script. So this is the configuration part, which is the which is a provisioner part. This shell script will be included in the provisioner part. So let's start creating the template from the scratch. Okay. So before creating, so this is the reference template which I'll be referencing. Let's create the main sections. We have the variables. Yeah, and let's create the builders, and builders will be in the form of an array. And also we will have provisioners. Again, it will be in a form of an array. Okay. So as I mentioned, builders is the main block which creates the instance, and once once that particular base image is downloaded and once it is provisioned, it is going to bake the pre-configured AMI out of that running instance. So for that, we can refer to the Packer configurations, and yeah, and as you can see over here, we have the builders, provisioners, and the post processors. So let's go with the builders, and under builders, we, as you can see, we have for multiple cloud providers like Ali Cloud, Amazon EC2 instance, Azure, DigitalOcean, Google Cloud, and so on. So let's take up Amazon, and we will take the EBS backed EC2 instance. So in this, so before creating this template, there are certain mandatory required fields. So let's check them. So we need the AMI name. The AMI name, okay, let's create that. Jenkins AMI. So basically, AMI name is nothing but the new AMI name, which is about so once after the configuration and after the provisioning, a new AMI will be created. So that newly created AMI will be named using this particular field, AMI -name. And after that, so the next one is the access configuration, which is access key, secret key, and the region. So let's mention the region field over here. So here we will be mentioning US East 1. So that's, so in this region we will be spinning up the instance, we will be configuring, we'll be baking the Jenkins image, and here in this region that big Jenkins image will be stored. So now, so in the one of the best practice is that the access key and the secret key will not be mentioned in the code, because much of this code will be pushed to the GitHub repository, and people who have access to that repository will see this, will see your accounts credentials, which is not at all safe. So for that, what we'll be doing is that, let me show you. ls in the home directory .aws. Yeah, so as you can see over here, I have already pre-configured the AWS CLI in my machine. So in the home directory, there will be a folder known as AWS. So in AWS, we will have a file known as credentials. And in that credentials file, I have already saved my access key and secret key, so that I did not mention it in the Packer template. And once I run this particular template, the Packer will automatically look into that AWS credentials file, and it's going to take up that particular credentials, and in that ID, in that instance, the Jenkins AMI will be deployed. Okay, so let's check the next required options. Yeah, of course, the instance type is like what kind of the instance type that we are choosing. Is that T2 micro or T2 small, T2 nano, or T3 small, so on. So in this instance, for example, we will be choosing T2 dot micro, and one of the main fields, which is the source AMI. Source AMI is the type of AMI which we'll be choosing. Let me show you how to get that AMI. So go to the EC2 instance. So let's launch the instance. Okay. So for example, in this instance, I'll be choosing Amazon Linux 2. And for Amazon Linux 2, this is AMI which we have. AMI -B, -0B5 and so on until E91. So that is the AMI ID. That AMI ID will be mentioned over here. So I have it already over here. Let's copy it, because please make sure to mention the correct AMI ID from your instance, because the AMI IDs keep updating. You need to check from the console to get the exact AMI ID, or else the template execution will fail, because it cannot download the. Yeah, so as I was saying, the AMI instance IDs will be different across regions. It will be different, and also the the AMI IDs keep getting updated. So please make sure you go to the console, get the exact AMI ID, and mention it in the template. And after that, let's go back over here. That's it. And coming to the builders section, yeah, so the type will be, sorry, so the type will be Amazon EBS. Oh, forgot. Sorry. Yeah. And then, so we will be requiring the SSH username to SSH into the machine and then execute these scripts. So what is that? It for the AMI, I mean for the Amazon EC2 instance, it will be EC2 username, and then for region, since we have already defined it in the variables, we'll be calling that variable. How to call that variable? So we'll be double quotes, double brace, user, and then double tilde. Within the double tilde, we will be mentioning the region. And as I mentioned, the important fields, which are those? Yeah, AMI name, and I'll tell you why we are defining variables and we're calling that variables. Once I finish this template, let me explain. And after the AMI name, access key, region we have included, instance type. User, and then also the source AMI. Oh, my bad. Done. So we have mentioned the import the required variables to create the AMI template. Let's refer it. Username, region, instance type, AMI hyphen Amazon hyphen EBS. Yes. So that is done. So now let's go to the provisioners section. So as I mentioned, provisioners is something which installs the required software packages and its dependencies. So as you can see on the left side, we have Ansible, we have Chef, we have PowerShell, we also have certain files, file parameters, Salt, Puppet, and some custom implementations, the Windows shell, and so on. So in our case, we will be taking up the shell parameters. So within the shell, let's copy and paste this. Type is shell. Inline is something where we'll be executing the command directly in that particular created EC2 instance. So we'll not be since we already have a setup script, we will not be having the include, but we'll be having an option known as script, and we'll be mentioning the absolute path of that particular script. Where is that script located? So in our case, since it's already in the same directory, we'll be mentioning setup.sh. So that is our script name. So okay, so now we have defined variables, builders, and provisioners. The purpose of, or why we have defined the variable section, is that it becomes more flexible for us to reuse these templates for having other if okay, for example, let's say that we have the Jenkins installation in this setup. If we need to have another configuration or another set of provisioners along with the Jenkins installation, what we can do is that we can use the same template, we can use the same script. All we can do is that we can add some provisioners and we can add some variables to it, so that the entire template becomes more reusable. We need not have to type from the beginning, from all the builders and provisioner section. We can just change the variables, or if you want to have the same setup in some other location, in some other region, just change the region name, or for a different AMI or for the different instance type, just change these variables and execute this template, and according to the region, according to the AMI, this Jenkins setup will have the same Jenkins configuration of that region or of that AMI source. It's as simple as that. So now we have created the sample packer file. So now let's try executing it. So the first command will be to validate the entire script. Validate sample.json. Yeah, so now the configuration is valid. So now let's run it. Packer build sample.json. So now what exactly is going to happen is that first is going to spin up the EC2 instance of this particular AMI. Once that EC2 instance is created, it is going to SSH into that EC2 instance using this username, which we have defined over here. And then once okay, so as you can see over here, it's waiting for the instance to be created. Let's check. Yeah, so now we can, as you can see over here, the instance is already created, and once it is created, it is going to SSH into that instance, and it's going to execute this particular shell script. And once the shell script is executed successfully, what Packer does is that it is going to stop that instance. It is going to create an image out of that instance, meaning it is going to bake the instance out of that image, and ultimately it's going to terminate that instance. And once the instance gets terminated, that instance will be saved in the AMI section of the EC2, and we'll look into that. Okay, so right now it is going to it is trying to SSH into the machine. Yes, as you can see over here, the IP is already created, and it's going to SSH, and after that it is going to execute this script. This might take a couple of minutes, so let's wait for some time, and then we will get back into this. Okay, so after around 10 minutes, the entire execution of the packet template was completed. So as you can, so as you can see over here, it was able to SSH into the machine, and then it started. Once it got SSH into the machine, then it started executing this shell script. So once it started executing the shell script, it started installing the Java dependencies, the Jenkins. Yeah, so after that the installations were complete, and then so in the shell script we also started and enabled the Jenkins service, and also as you can see over here, it was already active. And once it is active, it started baking the AMI out of it. Once the services were created successfully, it stopped the instance, and then it's going to create the AMI out of that instance, and then finally it will terminate the instance. And once it is terminated, the AMI is created successfully. Okay, so as you can see over here, this ending with 11F. So this was instance which was used to create that instance which we were talking about, and now it is that instance is totally terminated. So now let's check the AMI section. Yeah, so now the Jenkins AMI is created, because let me show you. So this is the name which we provided, the Jenkins AMI, and for the same name is applied, and the AMI is created. Let's make sure that this AMI is working in the first place. So let's launch an instance out of it. Jenkins demo. So this is the same AMI which we created. Instance type is micro. I'll have my own key pair. I have created my own Jenkins security group. So in this Jenkins security group, I have added two protocols. That is, one is with the SSH port, which is a port 22, and also the custom port, which is a port 8080. Port 8080 is a port where we can access the Jenkins dashboard. So let's get down and let's launch the instance, and it's created. So let's view the instance. This might take a couple of seconds to load it. Let's go to the dashboard again, running the instances. Okay, I think it's taking a little longer. Yeah, there we go. So now let's take its public IP and paste it with port 8080. Yeah, so as you can see over here, the Jenkins server is getting started because the instance is yet to be provisioned completely, but we do see the starting page of the Jenkins. So after a couple of seconds, we will see the page where we need to configure the Jenkins with this page. So from this point onwards, I think we know how to take the password from this particular path by SSHing into the Jenkins instance, take the administrator password, start installing the plugins, and then go forward. So this was the basic overview of creating a Jenkins baked instance out of the EC2 instance using Packer. In the next video, we will be creating a pre-configured Jenkins master instance Jenkins worker instance, and then using those two AMIs, we will be creating a distributed Jenkins architecture, as you can see over here, using Terraform. So in the Terraform scripts, we will be taking the baked Jenkins master and the workers AMI instances, and also with the VPC configuration scripts of Terraform, we'll be automating the entire deployment and configurations of the Jenkins distributed architecture. So once a deployment is completed, we will have a ready to go real time distributed Jenkins nodes by using Terraform and Packer. So that comes later on. Let's catch up in the next video. Before that, let's see if it is already, yeah. So now the Jenkins machine is already spin up, and now we are good to go. So in the next video, we will be creating the Jenkins master and the worker instance using worker AMIs using Packer. So let's get into it.